what advice would I give? First thing that kind of popped in my mind is pour your heart and soul into it, because you just never know. I mean, I had big dreams and got poked in the eye. And so just seize the day, hold nothing back and just pour your heart and soul into it, and understand that it might not work, but it might work too, and then to understand the importance of perseverance, understanding the importance of being a good teammate, understanding the importance of learning from, I threw that interception, the first series of my first game, and I'm trying to prove to these guys, and I throw a pick six, but I learned from it and went on to be the first sophomore ever to make All-State. I mean, so I think to look at, they're not failures. They're really not mistakes. They're just experiences that didn't work out the way you planned.
Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Masters of the Game. And today I get to be joined by kind of a Colorado legend, like a Denver legend, not kind of like an actual legend in the sports world. And, Mark McIntosh, I'll talk about his background here in a little bit, but the voice, right? When you're walking through a coffee shop, a room, when the television's on in the background and you hear that voice, if you're from Colorado when Mark McIntosh is speaking. So I'll get into his background in a little bit, but Mark, super excited to have you here.
Oh, Matt, it's such a pleasure. Thank you. Recently you came and I worked with the Denver Rescue Mission with their guys in the New Life program. And you came and talked to them and, RAS, man, reticular activating system. Which McCartney used all the time. But,
yep.
It's funny, you mentioned my voice, and that's usually like when I'm out and about, people, and they'll come up later and go, I heard you talking. I go, where do I recognize that voice from? And then they kind of look at me and go, then they're kind of going, okay, and then bing, the light bulb goes off. But it's usually very frequently it's my voice. That's the last thing they recognize is my name. What's your name? Mike Nelson? No.
Wrong part of it.
I saw Mike. Yeah. He's an old weather guy here in town. I see him.
Not weather. It's sports.
Huh?
It's so funny too, because when you and I met, a couple of weeks ago for our first coffee and got to sit down for an hour and a half and just chat. I mean, it's funny to me, like the voice, like there's certain like sounds, there's certain distinct things about individuals. And I always laugh too, because you have such a really cool voice, especially for sports broadcasting. And I always think about my kids when I started this interview series in the first place. I'd, open it up and they'd walk by and something and they'd stop my recording. They'd be like, just Dad, talk normal. Cause I'd launch into this voice for podcasting and they're like, just talk normal, Dad, come on. But it's so fun to dive in and talk about this. And, again, you did sports broadcasting for a long time, heavily within University of Colorado football in the absolute heyday, right? You got to spend time with Bill McCartney, with Rick Neuheisel, with Gary Barnett. Gary, we had on the show probably about a year ago now. Awesome individual. And you're a scholarship athlete from the University of Missouri. We're going to dive into how your career ended literally with a poke in the eye and changed everything for you. You are head of Victory Productions here in Denver, a nonprofit offering programs that ministers to a number of different areas, including helping displaced men on the streets to help solve the limited educational opportunities for low-income children, raising the rates of, the rising rates of kidney disease. You are the chairman of the Denver Host Committee for the 2026 Transplant Games of America. I mean, I could go on and on about just the way you're involved in serving and giving back, and also opening up opportunities for people like me, like we did on Monday, to go speak at the Denver Rescue Mission about people just trying to figure life out, right? And take the right next step and keep on the right path going forward. And I think it's just inspiring what you do in general. So I want to go straight into sports a little bit and give me your background.
How much time you got? We talked about 7-8 hours about sports.
It's going to be great. Reminisce time. But walk me through, you grew up in Missouri, high school sports. What were kind of your specialties?
So I grew up in Raytown, Missouri, which is a suburb of Kansas City. Anybody familiar with Kansas City, where Arrowhead Stadium, Kauffman Stadium, Raytown's just south of that area. Like Independence is north, Raytown's south, and Kansas City's west. And I was just, all I was interested in growing up, I was interested in sports and girls. That's about it. And I was a pretty good athlete. By the time I was a senior in high school, I was a 3 high school All-American. I was an athlete playing quarterback back in the mid-'70s when, a lot of teams were running the wishbone and stuff like that. So I was heavily recruited as a kind of an option quarterback in football. I was a point guard in basketball, and I was a center fielder in baseball. And so this is February of 1976. I had just signed a letter of intent to play football and baseball at the University of Missouri. I was a starting point guard on one of the best teams in the state, and we were looking forward to, competing for a state title. And then in June of 1976, I was projected to be an early round selection, maybe even a first round selection in the amateur baseball draft. I was what they call a 5-tool player. I could run, I could throw, I could field, I could hit, and I could hit the bat. So I'm living the good life, man. I'm probably the most celebrated.
Life is good.
It didn't hurt that the Kansas City Star, the guy that covered preps, a guy named Gene Fox, he really liked me. It like people would go, he writes so many stories about you. I go, well, I don't call him up and ask him to. He just shows up. and so, I had all these dreams in front of me, and I'm running down the floor in a high school basketball game 2 days after I'd signed my letter of intent. So I got a full ride in my back pocket. I'm looking forward to the June draft because I was going to go baseball.
Yes.
And, but I had a full ride in my back pocket. If I didn't like what they offered, I could say, okay, I'll see you in 3 years. I'll just go to Missouri, play or whatever. But I'm running down the floor in a high school basketball game, and I accidentally, a guy on the other team accidentally poked me in the eye. And it kind of just pushed my eyeball back and hit a nerve, which led to a rapid drop in blood pressure. So I'm staggering across the court, and just a few feet from the bench, I fainted and went down head first on my upper left side and my shoulder. And this is back in the mid-'70s, where a lot of high school gyms had those rubber courts that were like concrete. It was a thin layer of rubber over concrete. And I just hit. And I don't remember anything after that, but what I've been told, I was laying there in a pool of blood. Blood is pouring out of my left ear. I was in seizure. They had to stop the game, throw me in the back of an ambulance, and rush me off to the hospital to save my life. I had fractured my skull, suffered a severe concussion, broke all the bones in your middle ear, those cochlear bones that control your gyro, your depth perception and stuff.
Yes.
And when I went down, I tore up all the rotator cuff muscles in my left shoulder. So I couldn't judge fly balls anymore. And I'm left-handed, and, I could really throw. I had a good arm, but I couldn't throw anymore because I tore up all the rotator cuff muscle. And I'm deaf in my left ear from bam, hitting the floor. So my athletic career was over. They wouldn't let me play football anymore because of the severity of my head injury. And when you can't catch and you can't throw, those are kind of important things in baseball. And so
they are.
Ended up going from an early round selection to not even getting drafted. So I went off to Mizzou. They honored my scholarship. I'm very grateful. But, Matt, I was lost. I had put all my eggs in one basket. My goal was to be in the big leagues by the time I'm 22. 3,000 hits by the time I'm 40. Hall of Fame by the time I'm 45. That was McIntosh's plan, but God had a different plan.
So, that's wild, right? You think about a poke in the eye hits a nerve, drop in blood pressure, and then that one small thing had this cascading impact of a lot of different things. And walk me through, how did you, I don't know, just pick yourself back up again? Because that would be, I imagine, I can't imagine, extremely difficult of this dream disappears, then you still go to Missouri. Like, how did you work through that mentally and emotionally and spiritually?
Well, I was 17. And so the old amygdala had still needed some development, and so I didn't handle it very well because, like I mentioned, I had all my eggs in one basket. I was an athlete.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm down at Mizzou and I can't play. I work out with the football team. I just throw passes. My claim to fame as a Missouri Tiger football player was that Kellen Winslow, who went on to be a Hall of Fame, he was at Mizzou. He was 2 years older than me, and he was having some injury issues. It's my freshman year. They're trying to figure out what to do with me, but throwing a football didn't really hurt that much. But throwing a baseball, it's a different motion, as we all know. It's just a different motion. So I could still throw a football pretty good, but I could not throw a baseball. It just hurt, and they were shooting me full of cortisone and all that kind of stuff. But my claim to fame as a Missouri Tiger football player was that Kellen Winslow was hurt for a couple of weeks, and so I just throw him passes on the sideline, and he'd say, "Throw them everywhere." And I was a left-handed southpaw. I could throw them everywhere. Sometimes they'd look like a friggin' helicopter coming out there, but he just throw, so Kellen was just, I throw him passes, for about 20, 25 minutes. He's just working on his hands.
Yes.
So I helped develop a Hall of Famer. Hey,
you're welcome, Mr. Winslow. You're welcome.
He hadn't said thanks ever since. But I'm a journalist, writer, author, all that kind of stuff. But I was taught never let the facts get in the way of a good story. I'm kidding.
I like that.
But
I
went to Mizzou, all kidding aside, and I was lost. Because I couldn't go. It was very difficult for me to sit in the stands because once they said, "Okay, your career's done, you can't play football because of the severity of your head injury." To sit in the stands and watch these guys that, I was supposed to be down the field. I wasn't supposed to be sitting up here in the stands, flirting with a girl and drinking whiskey sours and all that kind of stuff. I was supposed to be down there doing my thing. And it was hard. It was very hard. And, I made some great relationships at the University of Missouri that I'll forever cherish. But I was not my best. And by the time I was like a senior, and, it was just very obvious that, my athletic dreams were not going to, and all my buddies were moving on to play like Kellen Winslow or, in baseball, Rick Sutcliffe, Bob Denier. These are guys that, they were my peers. And in basketball, Larry Drew and others, all these guys that, I used to go toe to toe with these people. And then suddenly they're all moving on to professional careers. And what am I going to be doing? And so, I believe in being honest and vulnerable, just like you are. And I struggled. I did way too much drinking. I did way too much recreational drugging, and I did way too much womanizing. And, at Mizzou as an undergrad, the young ladies would see me coming and say, "Stay away from that guy. He is trouble." Well, I struggled.
Well, I think too,
I didn't handle it well. But,
I think too, we look back and I talk about transitions all the time, right? Of like, as an athlete, we have to be careful of where we tie our identity. And, back in the day, you asked what I do, I play sports, right? When it's gone, it's a different animal, right? Because you're searching for who you are. And there's extremes to it, right? And there's, get towards my senior year of college and or after playing professionally, I was ready, right? Yeah. It wasn't a difficult transition because I was ready and excited for the next stage, right? Yeah. And again, faith had popped in my life, and that became more my identity of who I was, right? Yeah. But what pulled you out of kind of that side of things, where all of a sudden then you was launched into broadcasting, stuff like that? But what was there a trigger moment? Was there what was it?
There's a couple, and you mentioned transitions. you immediately made me think of William Bridges. Do you know William Bridges? You ever heard of him?
I don't.
That's a story for another day. But he talks about, he wrote a book called Transitions, which was part of my recovery, so to speak, because I was lost. But so I get out of Mizzou and I had no clue what I wanted to do. But I knew I wanted to run from my past because my injuries to my head and my, it's not like I'm dragging a leg around or anything. And so people would go, "Why aren't you playing sports?" Like, what are you doing? And then explain, got hurt and all that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to get out of Kansas City. And plus my longtime high school and college girlfriend had broken up with me. And she, I just felt like a loser. I really did. And so I moved to Dallas, Texas, just to kind of get away from my past. I was running, and I went to work for Frito-Lay down there in their sales management program. And I started on a Frito truck, having to get up at 4:00 in the morning, be in Tom Thumb stores to stock the Fritos and the Lays and the Ruffles and all that kind of stuff. And before the moms would drop the kids off at school, and then they were going shopping. I had to have everything looking good. But it so happened so I'm down in Dallas. I knew a few people from Mizzou that were down there, but I guess I made a decision. You gotta go away and kind of like Jesus wandered off for a while every once in a while. Just kind of figure out what the heck. And so I'm living in Dallas, no social life because I had to get up at like 3:30 in the morning and I'd work till 2, and then I had to go to bed at 7 and all that kind of jazz. But my old high school football coach, who used to lead the FCA huddle group at Raytown South High School, Vance Morris, still one of my great mentors. He coached high school and college football about 50 years ago. And I know there's a lot of football I bet there's somebody out there that knows Vance Morris. But anyway, Vance and Paula, his wife, Vance had taken a job as an assistant coach at Austin College in Sherman, Texas. And Bill Snyder was on that staff. You're a K-State boy. Or no, you're a Creighton, excuse me. I'm
a Creighton guy, but yeah, I know Bill Snyder, of course.
Yeah,
As a CU fan, I know Bill Snyder.
I got a Bill Snyder story when we get to the Buffs era. But anyway, we went out to dinner. And he was leaving. And he was driving away. I walked him out. We had a wonderful. And all of a sudden, he just slams on his brakes. And he started backing up. I was living in the Village, that huge apartment complex down there in Dallas off of Central and Lover's Lane. And he's backing up, and he jumps out, and he pops open the trunk of his car, and he's ruffling through a duffel bag. And he pulls out the torn and tattered Fellowship of Christian Athletes Bible that he used to use to lead our high school fellowship group. And he goes, "I think you could use this right now." And he handed me that torn and tattered Fellowship of Christian Athletes Bible. And because I was working crazy hours, I had no social life, I just began reading the Bible. And I read it from front cover to back twice, like it was a book. And I discovered what an incredible book of wisdom it was. And so that was kind of the birth of my, so I just kind of started, okay, there's a plan here. I don't know what exactly it is, but and then, I still was trying to figure out Jeremiah 29:11 for those scoring at home. Is for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper and not harm you, to give you hope in the future. But anyway, so I was tired of driving a Frito-Lay truck. I challenge anybody listening. You want to see how tough you are. You're a mental toughness coach. I challenge anybody. Go work for Frito-Lay through a summer in Dallas. And you're basically operating out of a tin box. That's, so you go into a store, see what they need, then you come back out and you're inside this tin box, pulling all kinds of stuff. And I finally realized this ain't for me. And so I moved a friend was moving from Dallas to Denver, and I had some vacation time, and it was like August, and I was so tired of the Texas heat and being inside that 10 box. So I helped her move up, and we get up here, and it was like 80 degrees, and we went up the mountains, and I had to wear a sweater at night. And she goes, and I said, you find me any job, I'm moving up here. And so
Yes.
I get back to Dallas, phone rings, it's my friend, and she goes, hey, call this guy. So I took a job sight unseen, leasing trucks in Denver, Colorado. So I am wandering farther and farther away from my sweet spot.
Yes.
You know, I'm selling potato chips, and I was really starting to run then. You know, I became a pretty big runner for a while, 3 marathons,
Yes.
close to 3 minutes, and running 5Ks, 10Ks, and all that kind of stuff. I'm just a dumb old jock, you know. But
Yep.
I come up to Denver and hate the job. I was leasing trucks, you know, like
At least in the 10 box now. Yeah.
The 18, you know, like, you know, U.S. Postal Service, one of their tractor trailers goes down. We could lease them.
Yes.
I could care less. But, and I was watching people from Colorado that are listening or watching. Ron Zappolo was a legendary sportscaster in Denver. And
I remember that name.
Watching Ron Zappolo do a live shot in the Broncos locker room, John Elway's rookie year, 1983. And it was the first of his many fourth quarter comebacks. And it was against the Baltimore Colts, who had drafted him. But he said, there's no way I'm playing for Frank Kush. And so they had to trade him for Chris Hinton to the Broncos. And so Ron Zappolo, always dapperly dressed, you know. What a day for the Broncos. Rookie quarterback John Elway rallies from 20 down in the fourth quarter to beat the Baltimore Colts. And I just, you know, I'm trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my life, excuse my French. And I'm watching Ron Zappolo do this live shot, and I just had an epiphany. I want to do what he's doing. I want to be a sportscaster like Ron Zappolo. So I went back to the University of Missouri and got my master's in journalism and began my sportscasting career.
That was the two triggers.
Those were the
started with faith,
was starting to grow from my high school football coach, who's still a great mentor, saying, I think you could use this. And then, you know, my faith was growing as I moved to Denver and all that. And then I'm watching Ron Zappolo do a live shot, Elway's rookie year, and I just had an epiphany. I want to be a sportscaster like Ron Zappolo.
All right, so I want to push on this a little bit because so my good friend Ruben Gonzalez, he lives down in Monument.
Okay.
4-time Olympian, sport of luge.
Yeah.
He saw Scott Hamilton ice skating in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
He made a decision, I'm going to be in the Olympics. Didn't have a sport. 4 years later, he's in the Olympics. Okay.
Wow.
You see this reporter in the Broncos locker room, you say, I want to do that. You go after it.
Mm-hmm.
It's rare to come across individuals who see something like that and then go after it. Why? Where does it come from for you?
Yeah. You know, I think it comes, and I would trace this back to sports. You know, I was a pretty good athlete from a very young age, and I had great coaches, and that's so critical. You know, I can't tell you how many people you talk to, I didn't like my coach or whatever, but I was very fortunate. I think part of it was I was good, you know, so they paid a little more attention to me than others, but yeah. I was always encouraged, go for it, you know, run the daylight. And so I just kind of grew up. And I think also, I think we're all born with certain gifts and talents. And, you know, I'm just kind of you know, I don't know, a visionary or whatever, but in athletics, you know, I could see things that, you know, I just anticipation or whatever, you know, and so I never, and I just think, you know, especially as I've gotten older, you know, I think it was Earl Nightingale said, when you feel the vibration of the iron string within. You got to go for it. And that's kind of, is the guy open? I think he is. Or, the pass or, it's just, that's just kind of,
I like that.
Like DNA, But
yes.
life will kick you around. And sometimes, as you talked about so wonderfully to the guys the other day, our self-confidence gets hammered. That's where, I left Kansas City because I felt like a loser. I got tired of people, why aren't you playing sports? And where's your girlfriend?
Yes.
I know. It's all gone.
It's all gone, right? And I think it's that, again, I love that, like leveraging sports, right? Because we all succeed and we fail in sports.
Yeah.
And it happens at different times, right?
Yeah.
And it can be the same play. And if you're a football player, you hit a certain gap with the ball, right? Assuming it's going to be open and there's a linebacker.
Yeah.
And so you hit said linebacker, but maybe he doesn't wrap up and you bounce off and all of a sudden you're running to the daylight, right? And so we can have success and failure within the same play even.
Yeah.
But it's that ability to, like, that's what I love about your story of, like, you keep going, right? And change the environment if you need to and shift the environment and dare to dream a little bit and, like, put it out there and go make it happen. And, like, I wrote it down, run to daylight. So you saw me look down there. I wrote down, like, run to daylight. I think that's a great way to look at it, that when you're in the dark, run to daylight. If the linebacker standing in front of you, go a different way.
Not
towards your end zone. Their end zone, but
as a
go.
Old football player that, I'm not the biggest guy, but, I'm 5'10", and I played at about 185, but, I'm not that heavy now. But I was taught that from a young age because before I started playing quarterback, I was a running back. And this is Pee Wee. And something that stuck with me was our coaches always said, run the daylight. When you get the ball, you want to go where they're not, and, you cut back and you run the daylight. And so
that's so cool. I love it. It's like, yes.
Yep.
What is you taking those steps too to get out of Kansas City, to get somewhere else, to then get to Denver, then go back to school? It's like these little slivers of light that sometimes when you see it, it's like go, because you never know what opens up either.
Yeah.
It's like a hole in football.
Yeah.
So you get your master's in journalism and you're kind of moving through and stuff like that. And then again, my initial memories are with the CU Buffaloes. And for all of you who don't know, I grew up a CU football fan, even though I didn't go to Colorado. I grew up from a very young age. My grandfather first had season tickets in 1950 to the football game. So I grew up going to games.
Wow.
Right at the 50-yard line, like 20 rows up. Go with my grandpa and my dad, and it was like amazing time.
Wow. Yeah.
So I grew up right on Colorado football. But how did you get hooked into obviously like kind of that world, and then to the Buffs, and they obviously done some with the Broncos, stuff like that. But how'd you get hooked in?
So I went back, got my master's. I get out of school in '86, and my first TV job was down the Rio Grande Valley, right along the Mexican-American border. 117th mark of the rookie leagues of television, but I was in the game.
I got drafted.
Yeah, I got drafted. Yeah. So now, what are you going to do with it, right? And I was making a whopping $12,500 a year as the weekend sportscaster, KGT, Kahevite, the CBS station in the Rio Grande Valley. And after 2 years, Channel 4 hired me. So I come to Denver in '88, and it was funny. And it was Channel 4 where Ron Zappolo, when I was living out here before, I watched Channel 4. And he's the guy that inspired me to go back to school and get my act together. And so the first thing I did when I walked into Channel 4, I walked into Ron's office. And I just said, you're the reason I'm in this business. And he's like, yeah, whatever. I go, no, seriously. I was searching, and I watched you do a live shot in the Broncos locker room, John Elway's rookie year, and I just said, I want to be like him. And so they hired me, and we were the home of the Buffs. Channel 4 was the home of the Buffs back then. So we did the coaches' shows, and we televised all the games that weren't nationally televised and all that kind of stuff. I flew on the team plane. I basically was embedded. inside this football program. And so that's what
amazing
brought me to Denver and got me so, and here it is. Well, we're going on 40 years almost. It would be next year, the 27th season will be, my 40th year around, and I'm still real close to. I know where a lot of skeletons are buried.
We won't get into that today,
but I'm still real close. I don't know Prime.
Yes.
Well, but I interviewed Prime one time. The only time I've interviewed him, and I wore you talked about Barnett earlier. 2001 was the last Big 12 championship the Buffs won, and for whatever reason, Barney was the coach. They beat Texans in the Big 12 championship game. Yep. But for whatever reason, Barney felt that I did something that year. I hosted a show. I've got a 2001 Big 12 championship ring. I feel like going and getting it, but I won't.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, and so I'm curious. So first question I have is, who is one of the best coaches you had coming up as a player?
Mm-hmm.
And what did you learn from that coach that helped kind of mold you?
Yeah.
And then I'm curious to hear your answer. Then I have a follow-up based on some coaches that you've interacted with.
Sure. Okay. Well, kind of my Mount Rushmore of coaches. There's two from Coach Morris. So I've already talked about Coach Morris. And then Coach Lathrop. Bud Lathrop was the legendary high school basketball coach at Raytown South. I think he ended up being the winningest coach in Missouri State history or something. But Bud, you're a mental toughness coach. Bud taught us to be tough. He carried a paddle around during basketball practice. Like if you didn't box out or you didn't do something, he'd hold on, he'd blow the whistle, and he'd go bent over, and he'd walk over and just go whack, and just hit you on the butt.
Can't do that anymore, folks. Can't do that anymore.
Actually got fired. Somebody find it, and it lit up sports talk in Kansas City for 2 weeks. So, his players going, that man taught me more about perseverance and toughness, and other people going, that guy's crazy. You need to throw him in jail. But Bud Lathrop, just taught me to compete. Bud Lathrop taught me to never give up, and to be the best you can be for your teammate next to you. So those are certainly two from high school, and then McCartney certainly on that. But yeah,
because I want to contrast this because I think you have a unique perspective as a player, but then also you were so embedded with McCartney and obviously Neuheisel and some of those and Barnett but what, I guess, looking at the coaches that inspired you, did you see similarities or differences? And what were they between a McCartney and some of the coaches you mentioned? What did you see that makes coaches great, I guess?
Yeah. Oh, gosh. So Morris was more of a teacher and and he wasn't a fiery kind of guy, but a quick example. So back in my day, high school was sophomore through senior. And I won the starting varsity job as a sophomore from the first game and beat out the guy that had been the JV coach or JV quarterback the year before. And so a lot of the seniors were not happy that their buddy, this sophomore, is quarterback. Very first game of the year. We're clicking. Marching, they kicked off to us. We're marching. We get inside their 10-yard line. They couldn't have had a better start. We run T36 pass. I knew that I was supposed to roll out because if I threw it out there and it got picked off, I'm the only one that could be out there. Well, I reversed out, rode the fullback, and I pull out to, I'm supposed to roll out, but I got some pressure. And so I just threw it out there, got picked off, and ran back 99 yards for a touchdown. The very first game, first series, this young guy who was trying to prove to his, upperclassmen that, I had the moxie to get it done. And so I'm looking for a place to just crawl off the field and just feel the heat of these guys. And Sunday I bumped into somebody, and it was Coach Morris. He had come out on the field, and he had said, "You know what you did wrong?" And I said, "Yeah, it didn't roll out." And he got a big old grin on his face. I'm getting emotional about it. He got a big grin on his face, and he goes, "Good. I know it'll never happen again because I believe in you."
Mm.
I went on to be the first quarterback in the history of the state of Missouri to be named All-State as a sophomore.
Mm.
You talk about what start.
Talk about a bad start, but what a great coach.
Yeah. And so he was that kind of coach.
Mm.
Lathrop was fiery. McCartney was fiery. But, I guess that's a great question. I don't really know. You know it. I guess it's almost like pornography. You know it when you see it. There's certain coaches that just, and certain players, I think, react differently to certain coaches. But I had a lot of great. I still to this day have great coaches around me. People like you are great coaches around me. I think, and that's something that we talk to the guys in the rescue mission about.
Yes.
Who are you hanging out with, man? Are they raising you up? Are they dragging you down?
Yeah, it's so huge.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm curious, like, you have such good, like, McCartney stories and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And, but do you mind sharing like a story or two about kind of him and how he inspired and coached a little bit?
Oh.
Other than calling your questions stupid on the sidelines, you can talk about that too.
Well, Coach Mac, we became real close. So, it started as just this young reporter that, I got promoted from I got promoted from the rookie leagues to AAA. Denver's a pretty big market, got a lot going on.
Yes.
It's not New York or LA, but it was close. And, it was a time that Denver sports was just going nuts. I mean, we were flying all over the world, covering everybody. Broncos are winning Super Bowls and the Avs and blah, blah, blah. But, and then we became close friends, and I was one of his caregivers until his final days. So we became very close. Yes. Coach Mac, he just, I'm thinking about, he was a big dreamer. He saw what others can't envision. A lot of people said, don't take that Colorado job. He was Bo Schembechler's top assistant, and he took a downtrodden Colorado program. He came out here and said, we're going to win a national title. And they did. Then he walks away from football to be a better man, husband, father, starts Promise Keepers and says, we're going to put a million men on the mall in the nation's capital. Did it. Bill McCartney could see what others can't envision. And, he taught me so much about my relationships with my daughter and everything else. He just was, I was just kind of one of those guys that when he said something to you, you took it to the bank and you could hang your hat on it. Yep. And just, he would say, I'm pretty good at exhortation. Yeah, I'd say so. You're able to go into, Watts, Houston, Detroit, and get these great black athletes to come to Lily White Boulder. The dude was persuasive. And
yeah, he accomplished a lot at Colorado, that's for sure. Yeah. And just with Promise Keepers and all that as well.
Yeah. So, but I got a zillion stories, but he just on my Mount Rushmore, he's front and center.
Yes.
But
I love that. Yeah. Well, you gotta tell real quick the story we talked about before about the whole stupid question thing. Oh, you got to give a little context around that because I think that's hysterical. So
we would televise the games that the networks didn't pick up. And back then the Bucks were good, so they were picking up most of the games. But they played the dog teams, and back then K-State was terrible, Iowa State was terrible, KU was terrible, Mizzou was okay, but so. we televise those games, and a lot of times the Buffs would, they knew they were going to win. They're third-ranked Buffs on the road against 0-7 K-State. In the first half, a lot of times, they just kind of playing with the roadkill before they finished it off, And so
yes,
a lot of times first half would be sluggish for the Buffs, and the first guy that McCartney's got to talk to is me. He's contractually obligated because of Channel 4's relationship. He's got to talk to me, and he's not happy. And so he'd be kind of trotting toward me, and I must admit, I'd be going, oh, God, I dread this, And I'd ask him a question, and a lot of times he'd just say, McIntosh, that's the dumbest question I've ever heard. And then he'd just go, never even think about answering the question. And then the next day, his wife, Lindy, we became close. And she passed before Mac, but she was fabulous. She'd always call me the next day, Mark, don't take it personally. He really does like you, but you're getting even his worst, because he's thinking about what he's going to say to the team. He's going to go in there and just rip into him, and he could rip into you,
Yep.
And so I was kind of like the warm-up act before he went in there and just ripped into his team.
So good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I know he's grief about that. He'd go,
just give me.
You're not going to tell that story, are you? Like if we were out speaking or something. I go, yeah, I'm going to tell that story, of course.
Oh, that's great.
I got some ammunition on you here, buddy.
I was going to say, I'm just warming you up, Coach, for your halftime speech. You're good.
Charming
You're good.
Guy. No. I've seen the guy that'll chew your butt off.
Demanded a lot.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah. That's so good. So I want to talk real quick about your speaking.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I do want to talk about kind of what you're doing with, if you don't mind giving an overview from Victory Productions and also the Transplant games. Do you mind? Because I think it's so, I mean, that's how I'm just so blessed to be part of your life. So
as my media career began to be more freelance, based upon my life experiences of, promising athletic career, gone poke in the eye. And then I'm married for the third time. My first two wives decided they didn't want to be married anymore. I have a child from each one of those. And then, I still have people to this day out here in Denver go, why aren't you doing sports anymore? Well, they eliminated my job. And so I started Victory Productions, just my little company, just to, based upon my life experiences, to encourage others to achieve goals and overcome challenges. Life will poke you in the eye, right? And then I was diagnosed 2.5 years ago with a blood cancer called amyloidosis. There's no cure for it, and it was destroying my kidney. And so suddenly, I'm in dialysis for 4 hours, 3 times a week, and you chain a writer, speaker, and author to a machine for 4 hours, and you can't go anywhere. I started researching everything and kind of discover, holy smokes, we've got a growing kidney crisis in America. We got almost 100,000 people sitting on kidney transplant lists. We only get like 30,000 transplants a year. And it's getting worse. There's 550,000 people on dialysis. It's supposed to go to 1 million. And it drastically affects communities of color. And we all know as athletes, we don't see color. We see our teammates and stuff. So I grew up around black and brown people and no families and everything. And it just broke my heart. I had dialysis Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. All my friends, Amber, Jackie, John, Elizabeth, Joyce, Maria, and Mark, all were of color and poor. They arrived via Medicaid-provided transportation. So I just started really just talking about all this. That led to me starting Drive for 5, just trying to encourage more live organ donations and better wellness. That drew the attention of the Transplant Life Foundation that runs these transplant games. They've been around since 1990. They're coming to Denver. I'm the chair. I'm the chair of the 2026 Transplant Games of America. We're hosting them in Denver. So now I'm going around the state, and we're using the games to encourage Colorado. When I moved to Colorado almost 40 years ago, we were the healthiest state in the country, and we've slipped. And so now I'm just on this personal crusade. I believe I believe God's calling me. See, McIntosh, they're giving me certain gifts and talents and experiences. Go out there and make a difference. And so we're using the games as a platform for the Colorado comeback. We want to be the state. We want to be the nation's healthiest state. And how are we going to do that? We've got a plan. And so I'm out all over the state talking, bringing the good, better, best message. That, we can once again rise to the top and become the nation's healthiest state. And so we got the Colorado Caravan. We're wandering around. And so
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, athletes from all over come into Colorado too for that. And you and I, talked about this. We've talked about this a couple of times, but just, I think we have this almost duty to get healthy again, right?
Yeah.
And start eating the right things and taking care of yourself. And this is one kind of avenue to do that. To make that happen, right? We almost broke down on Monday and started doing push-ups with some of the guys at the Denver Rescue Mission. So, but it's those.
I think we can hold our own against those guys. I think.
Let's go. But you start just the importance of that, and So for those of you, I'll put links to the Transplant games and the links and everything, but please go check it out. And I mean, come on to Colorado. If you're listening to this from Colorado, show up. And I think you're doing amazing things. Give people an overview of kind of speaking a little bit, because your message, you just shared a little bit of it, but let me maybe end this way. This will be the second to last question, because I'll ask where people can find you. But what advice would you give to, athletes just trying to perform their best, get to the next level, figure out life, just do life right? What advice would you give them?
Oh, gosh. Dang, I would have deferred to the mental toughness coach here. What advice would I give? First thing that kind of popped in my mind is pour your heart and soul into it, because you just never know. I mean, I had big dreams and got poked in the eye. And so just seize the day, hold nothing back and just pour your heart and soul into it, and understand that it might not work, but it might work too, and then to understand the importance of perseverance, understanding the importance of being a good teammate, understanding the importance of learning from, I threw that interception, the first series of my first game, and I'm trying to prove to these guys, and I throw a pick six. But I learned from it and went on to be the first sophomore ever to make All-State. I mean, so I think to look at, they're not failures. They're really not mistakes. They're just experiences that didn't work out the way you planned. And so be resilient. Maybe, there's a whole lot that goes into that. But I think that's where you got to surround yourself with positrons, And so, that's teamwork. That's sports. We hang it together. We're not, we don't start pointing fingers at each other. I have no idea if that answered your question, but.
No, I think it's brilliant. I love the, focus on it's almost like it's not good or bad. It's an experience.
Yeah.
So how do you take that experience and do something with it?
Yeah. Well, that's, you experience that with the guys that are stronger cord works with the rescue mission, just, all right, guys, we have a choice here. Has anybody's life gone the way you planned? No. I mean, nobody planned on being in the Denver Rescue Mission New Life program. But here they are. And I say this to them all the time. Now it's up to us. Are we going to learn from this? Or are we going to be a victim? That's your choice. But I don't play the victim card very well. So we're going in this direction. And you got to be mentally tough. So I'm going to send you to Matt. He'll whip you into shape.
Darn right. Now, well, I know we're right at time, Mark, so I want to be kind of cognizant of that. Yeah. But last question, where can people find you? I mean, obviously we'll have links and everything, but where's best to connect with Mark McIntosh and what you're up to?
Victory Productions, our website is Seek Victory, SEEK Victory.com. And that'll get you to me. And
that's perfect.
I can talk to you for hours, and that's what, it's again, that it kind of, who you hanging out with, hang out with people you have common interests. That doesn't mean you can't go out and try to recruit some tweeners to come your way. But one of my favorite sayings is hang out with the positrons, avoid the negatoids, and recruit the tweeners.
So critical. And I'm so fortunate that our paths have crossed.
Yeah.
And so thankful that I got to speak on Monday at the Denver Rescue Mission and just spend time with those just amazing individuals who have overcome so much.
Yeah.
And I just can't thank you enough for that. And thank you for your time today. It means a lot to me that you take time out of your busy schedule to do that.
It's my pleasure. And you are always welcome to come back and talk to the knuckleheads. We're all a bunch of knuckleheads, And,
we all are. Just a bunch of knuckleheads talking to knuckleheads.
See what others can't envision.
Swoche. That's what we broke with on Monday.
Yeah, and that comes
so
from
good.
McCartney. That final thought, and I'll go. This is one more McCartney story. So Mac passes away in January, and his oldest son, Mike McCartney, who's a sports agent, been one for a long time. Mike and I have known each other forever, but he was the first speaker. There was like 6 speakers. They all were just awesome speakers. But Mike was the first. And he talked about his dad. He's going, my dad, he had a unique ability. He could just see things that others just couldn't or wouldn't envision. And it's just like, bang, it just hit me. He's right. We talked about it earlier. National championship, CU, million guys on the lawn. And so I just shortened it down to see what others can envision. But that came from Mike McCartney talking about his father, and it was true. And so I thank you again, and just wish the best to everybody out there that's listening or watching. But see what others can envision and dream big. Go for it.
You never know what happens. Well, thank you again, Mark. And I want to thank everyone as well for watching, listening, for being part of this. As I say every time, right, it's take one little bit of info, one thing that Mark said, and we're all about action here. So take action upon it. Try something, do something, and tweak it and make it yours. Yeah. But you have to take action if you want to see any sort of result in your life, even if you're scared. Know that Mark and I are scared. We've been scared many times, but we continue to take the step forward. So please share this episode with your family and friends and colleagues and teammates and strangers on the street. Doesn't really matter. Get the word out, and please connect with Mark as well. So with that, we will see you all on the next Masters of the Game interview. Thanks, everybody.